Continuing our theme of elasticity, I would like us to consider the determinants of price elasticity of demand. This can cause some trouble because people tend to think that a determinant of demand, price, income, price related goods, tastes, is the same as the determination of price elasticity of demand. Elasticity means flexibility, responsiveness, and thus what we are trying to determine are the factors which cause the demand for a particular product to be either very responsive to a change in price or not very responsive. Let us consider the demand for tuna and a change in price of tuna. What factors will determine the extent to which the demand for tuna changes? The most important factor that determines that responsiveness is the substitutability of the product. If we increase the price of tuna, the demand for tuna will fall. But it will fall much more if consumers perceive ready substitutes. For example, if many consumers can switch to salmon, then we would expect, other things equal, the demand for tuna to be relatively price elastic. If other fish are not seen as substitutes, then an increase in the price of tuna will result in only a small or inelastic decrease in the demand for tuna. The more substitutable a product, the higher is the price elasticity of demand. Associated with that is this rather tricky width of definition. This simply refers to the way we define our product. If we define our product as tuna, then clearly there are some substitutes for tuna, salmon, mackerel, haddock, but these substitutes might not be regarded as very close. If, however, we define our tuna as skipjack tuna, or if we define it as a particular brand of tuna, or if we define it as tuna of that brand in olive oil as opposed to brine, salted water, we can see that the more narrowly we define the product, 300 grams skipjack tuna in olive oil, the more will be the substitutes. Thus, the more narrow the definition, the more price elastic is demand, and the greater will be the response of consumers to a change in the price of that narrowly defined product. If we see the product as having a high degree of necessity, then other things equal, price elasticity of demand will be inelastic, will not be very flexible. This is because we perceive this product as necessary, and then even as the price changes, we do not move away from the product significantly. Thus, if it was felt that tuna was a highly necessary product, an increase in its price would not cause a very large decrease in its demand. This is of course unlikely to be true for tuna, but is a principal reason why the demand for petrol is so price inelastic, because it is seen as an extremely necessary product. As the price of petrol rises, the demand for petrol falls, but it falls by a very small amount. It is very price inelastic. Number 4, the percentage of income we spend on a product. Other things equal, the higher the percentage of income we spend on a product, the more sensitive we are to a price change, and thus the more price elastic is the demand for that product. Tuna is likely to occupy a small percentage of people's income, so an increase in the price of tuna will not have a large impact upon consumers' budgets, and thus, other things equal, we would expect the demand for tuna to be price inelastic. Time. This will be a particular issue, especially when we consider elasticity and the exchange rate. We normally say that the shorter the time period that we are considering, the more inelastic is the demand, principally because consumers are not able to find adequate substitutes. Over a longer period of time, a given price rise will result in a greater drop in demand, and thus the longer the time period, the more price elastic is demand.